my name is Laura and I'm part of the church leadership at Holy Trinity, and I want to talk to us this morning about this question: who is welcome at your table? Now, on Monday we recognised Windrush Day, a day that's been marked to recognise and honour the contribution of the Windrush generation and their descendants, and to keep their legacy alive for the future. Just a very small way we can begin to right some of the wrongs that society has placed on this generation. Also on Monday, there was a banner flown above a stadium stating the words "White Lives Matter," in protest against the Black Lives Matter global movement at a football game. In the wake of the brutal murder of George Floyd and these events and many more, we're confronted with the horrendous, inherent racism that has filtered our systems of power and structures of society that have suppressed Black people for far too long. Now, as a church and as part of the church leadership, I want to apologise. We're sorry for where we failed to provide opportunities, for where racism has been inherent within our structures and within our community. And I recognise that saying sorry isn't enough, and we need to look to seek to take action against discrimination and racism in our structures and our understanding. And we'll be looking at ways we can do this from now into the autumn and beyond. And if you've got any thoughts, please do get in touch. It is clear, racism is a sin. And I want to challenge us today to consider who we are inviting to our table. And I'm going to talk for a little bit longer than our usual thoughts for the week, partly because it's such an important topic, and I want us to try and do it some justice as we try and navigate a way forward. And there'll also be a self-reflective exercise to help us explore how our unconscious bias impacts who we have friendships and relationships with, and begin to address the inherent racism in our society and in ourselves. I'm no expert, and I've failed in this area, and I want to be open and honest with you about that. I'm simply trying to navigate this path too. My heart is to see racism and injustice of any form of difference, whether it's about age, able-bodied, sexism, to have their walls broken down and to have healing take place. And we do need to take time to hear different voices, stories, and give platforms to those who've been suppressed. And this is just a start at attempting to do this. So hear my heart, church. I'm really, really sorry where we failed. And I just want to seek to do this well. And if you misread anything or if I say something wrong, I'm sorry. Just talk to me about it, because I want to learn and want to grow in this. So, who has a seat at your table? There are so many stories of radical hospitality throughout the Bible. From Genesis to Jesus' ministry to the life of the early church, God calls his people consistently to be radically hospitable. Who do we invite to our table? The book of Acts, following the birth of the church, has so much to offer us to help us think through radical hospitality. In Acts 10, verses 34 to 36, I'm going to read it to you. Peter fairly exploded with his good news. It's God's own truth. Nothing can be plainer. God plays no favourites. It makes no difference who you are or where you're from. If you want God and you're ready to do as he says, the door is open. The message he sent to the children of Israel, that through Jesus Christ, everything is put together again. Well, he's doing it everywhere, among everyone. There is no favouritism for God. There should be an extended welcome in all the church. In the age of coronavirus, we've found so much of ourselves having to stop and put away and lock the doors. But we might not be able to physically invite people to our table. But more than ever, we need to express radical hospitality to others, to live out what it means to love our neighbour. We are, as Christians, called to be radically hospitable, radically welcoming, and our relationships are a key way in which we can address this. Where we've taken time to pause in this age of coronavirus Let's take time to reflect on how we might come out of this season into be a better church and a better people, to seek to break down the walls of injustice that have filtered our society and our churches for so long. So I'm going to invite you to journey with me together and to do an exercise that might help us to explore some of our unconscious bias and how it might be impacting the way we build relationships with others. It might reveal some things to you that you don't really like about yourself. And I have to let you know that I took this exercise from a session I've done at Theological College. And when I first did this, I was really shocked with what I realised about myself and my friendships. And it's taking prayerful consideration to think through how I might move forward. You might want to talk to someone about it once you've done this exercise, maybe a home group leader or a friend. And I'm not going to ask you any difficult questions, and you're not going to have to share it with anyone, but I encourage you to try and explore how unconscious bias may have slipped into the way that your life is led, because I was really surprised how it had slipped into mine. So, unconscious bias. Unconscious bias is automatic and occurs with a lack of awareness or intention and control. And it's something that happens in our brains when we don't slow down, when we don't stop and think. Automatically. It's part of our brain's way of coping and keeping us safe and stopping us from being in danger. But it can also support or oppose a person or a thing in an unfair way, and it can cause us to act in a way that doesn't welcome all. And there's lots of evidence to say that if you're in a group that is full of people like you, you're less able to be empathetic, essentially less able to make a positive change in the world. And I'm no expert, but when I look into the research, much of which is secular and has happened in the business world, if you have diversity in your closest groups, you're essentially more able to be like Jesus, essentially more able to be empathetic, loving, kind, and make positive change in society and in your roles in the workplace, the home, school, and life, and seek to act for justice. So this exercise hopefully will reveal a bit about how unconscious bias slips into our lives, our friendships, and our closest friends, and maybe help challenge us about where we build relationships and how we extend beyond those who are similar to us. So, what I'd like you to do is draw a grid on your piece of paper. You're going to need to draw your grid 11 down and 8 wide. I'm going to put up on the screen what the grid needs to look like and the headings at the top. You can either copy this or screenshot it and print it and just write it on it. Okay, now write down your 10 most trusted friends in order from 1 to 10. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to share them with anyone. It doesn't want to include your family or people that you live with, but it wants to include the people that you would trust to share your deepest problems with, the people that you would call when you're feeling really at rock bottom, people you'd be comfortable inviting around to your house when it's a complete mess, people you'd call when you're feeling low. So number 1, the person you'd go to first, through to number 10. You might want to pause this while you do this. Think about who you let into that inner circle. And I have to admit that when I did this, I did struggle to think of 10. So don't worry if you don't have 10. Right, once you've done that, I'd like you to mark with a tick anyone who has the same status with you under each heading. So for example, if you're a woman like me and your friend identifies as a woman, give them a tick and go down your grid and tick each of those. Okay, then ethnicity. Are they from the same ethnic group as you? Again, just go down and tick if they're from the same as you. Then age, think within about 5-ish years of age. I'm not going to ask you to be exactly the same date of birth or anything like that. Okay, Okay, next, education. Do they have the same educational background as you? If you're watching this and you're currently in education, you might want to think about when you're finished education. So, for example, when you finish school or when you finish college or university. Have they got the same educational background as you? Give them a tick. Okay, next, marital status. Are they married and you're married, or are they single and you're single? Okay, then faith. Are they of the same faith as you? Okay, take a moment to reflect. Have a look at your grid. How many ticks are there? It is so easy to surround ourselves with people who look like us, who have similar experiences to us. We have unconscious bias working in our brains all the time. Our brain seeks patterns and draws those to us who are similar to us. And there is a difference between unconscious bias and prejudice. That is absolutely clear. And I have to admit that in my 10 most trusted friends, I only have one person with a different ethnicity to myself. Does that make me racist? Of course not. But we can work towards inviting others to our table, to seek to change, to become more like Jesus, to become more welcoming to those who perhaps are not exactly the same as us. So, what do we need to do about it? We need to slow down a bit and consider our unconscious bias, just as completing this exercise would have revealed to you. And that is one way we can begin to address how unconscious bias seeps into our society. Only one. But there are many more. So let's keep listening and talking to one another, taking time in this moment to enact some change, taking time to have the uncomfortable conversations and being real about where we are to enable that change to happen. So, as we look towards lockdown starting to lift, who do you invite to your table? We're called to love our neighbour as ourselves. A radical statement on its own, and we're all made in the image of God. If we ask God to help us to begin to see others how God sees them, then we'll find ourselves not being able to not be radically hospitable. It's a path we're all called to. And are we willing to begin to work on making the steps? Let's gather our thoughts and pray. Jesus, I confess that I find it easier to extend hospitality to people like myself, and I rarely look beyond the enjoyable and the compatible to invite someone unexpected or even controversial. Explode my narrow vision and teach me the kind of hospitality that transforms lives. Father, help me to live this life to the full, being true to you in every way and being kind to everyone, reflecting the love of Christ. Amen. Thanks, guys.